Wildcard Weekend 2026 exposed one clear truth. Simplistic offense is dead. It died all at once in a big puff of smoke. Multiple devastating losses can be blamed on unsophisticated approaches to offensive football. Of course, it's no secret that complexity is beneficial, but for a long time there's been a tug of war between these philosophies, one that prioritizes running your system and out-executing the opponent, and ones that prioritize deception and deeper intricacies that are meant to fool the opponent. Up till now, there hasn't really been a clear winner. But Wildcard Weekend sided with complexity, and in the ensuing days, many of the losing teams parted ways with coaches that preferred the simplistic way. But this isn't a video about how those people didn't succeed and why they had to go. It's about how the approach didn't succeed and why it, systemically, has to go. It's about the lessons we've learned from this weekend and about how fans can no longer accept simplicity. Now, execution is still key. It is the most important thing. But without a dedication to complex offense, you're going to hit a ceiling. Let me make that case. You're watching Light Boxes, a football show that helps you think outside the box about the NFL. I'm your host, Rob Ballantine. It would mean the world to me if you like the video and click subscribe to this channel. I want to grow this community and bring in more NFL fans just like you. All right, let's dive in. To start, we should define what the desired complexity is, and we can look no further than three of the wildcard round winners, the 49ers, the Rams, and the Bears. Now, these offenses are very different in plenty of ways, but they all share two core tenets that I think are baked into their DNA. First, they dictate the terms of the fight. They don't say, this is how I'm going to beat you when you run cover 3. Instead, they say, this is how I'm going to force you to run cover 3 when I want you to. They use motion and formations and personnel and different play sequences in order to get advantageous matchups down the line. And second, they stress every defender mentally as much as possible. And that may sound intuitive, but there are plenty of play callers that focus more on finding physical matchups to win. But these offenses, they're going to run a lot of different plays out of the same formation. And they're going to run the same play multiple times out of different formations. They want to make sure the defenders are always guessing. They'll use misdirection to distract defenders' eyes. They know taxing the opposition mentally is the best way to ensure physical mistakes too. The Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, and Ben Johnson offenses certainly feel complex when you watch them, but there are also some really good stats that I got from Sharp Football Analysis that paint the picture of what makes them so lethal. When it comes to the percentage of plays they run with pre-snap motion, these teams are all in the top 6. The percentage of plays where the QB is under center, which gives more credence to the run and makes the offense more variable in general, they're also all top 6. And here's the real kicker. The percentage of plays using play action fakes. They are the top 3 teams. They are constantly making defenders, especially linebackers, worry about both run and pass. One note, the 49ers play action percentage that I'm using is only with Brock Purdy at quarterback. The season-long number is much lower, but that number accounts for Mac Jones starting 8 games this season. So it made sense to me to remove the backups numbers from this since the way the offense wants to operate is with Brock Purdy under center. Let's compare that to the 3 teams whose simplistic offenses died this weekend. The Philadelphia Eagles, the Los Angeles Chargers, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And you can see they are no better than the middle of the pack in each area, and sometimes towards the bottom. Their game plans didn't buck any trends, didn't put undue mental burden on defenders, and these teams suffered as a result. Let's work through these offenses' issues in reverse chronological order of when they were eliminated. The Steelers lost to the Texans on Monday night 30-6 in a game that was actually 7-6 for most of it because Texans quarterback CJ Stroud led one good drive and then was horrible until the waning minutes of this game. And head coach Mike Tomlin of the Steelers is stepping down as a result of this loss. Now, he wasn't the offensive coordinator, and there are plenty of other reasons that lead to why his 19-year tenure as the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach is coming to an end. But his years-long inability to find a creative offensive coordinator who would be ahead of the curve certainly contributed to his downfall. Tomlin's most recent OC hire, Arthur Smith, was actually a pretty good one, but that didn't matter at all this year because when you sign Aaron Rodgers in his 40s to come be your quarterback, you're going to run the Aaron Rodgers offense. You're not going to run pretty much anything else, especially when the stakes are the highest in the playoffs. Aaron Rodgers is going to do what he pleases, and what he pleases is pretty schematically stale at this point. And the Steelers' loss highlights the first huge issue with this approach. Simplistic offense can play into the opponent's strength. And it could be argued that every aspect of the Texans' defense is strong, and Rodgers' tendencies certainly made it seem like that. Rodgers prefers either, one, to dump the ball off short to receivers or running backs who are going to make a guy miss or break some tackles. Problem with that, Houston is one of the best tackling teams in the league. Or Rodgers wants to hang in the pocket and deliver perfectly placed vertical passes to receivers down the boundary. That doesn't work because the Texans' defensive backs are some of the best in the league, and the defensive line is constantly crushing the pocket, moving Rodgers off his spot and not allowing him to deliver accurately. If there is a good way to attack the Texans' defense, and that is a big if, it's using more play action and running more horizontal route concepts that force the linebackers in this defense to be on their P's and Q's in coverage. Again, there's no weak points in Houston, but that would be the one I would attack. But unfortunately, that style of play is just not in the Rodgers playbook at this point. The Chargers lost 16-3 at New England on Sunday night, and OC Greg Roman was fired as a result. And Greg Roman has been in the Harbaugh cinematic universe for almost 2 decades now, so I know it was tough for Jim to fire his buddy, but it was long overdue from a schematic perspective. The Chargers' offensive futility certainly fits in with the first issue of playing into the opponent's strength. Roman's route concepts did almost nothing to help the Chargers receivers get open against the Pats' stellar secondary. But it also highlights the second big issue. Simplistic offense doesn't properly compensate for injuries. The LA O-line has been ravaged by injuries this season. It's the clear weak point of this roster. Yet Roman constantly was calling medium to long developing plays with routes down the field, which required Herbert to stay in muddy pockets too long. And even worse, Roman wasn't calling bootlegs or rollouts or anything to move the launch point for Herbert and give him more of a chance to deliver on these plays. Moving the QB's launch point is an important part of play calling. It doesn't allow the pass rushers to plan for exactly where the quarterback will be in the pocket. It essentially makes them think more, which has been the theme of this video. And it seemed like every play the Chargers ran had Herbert dropping straight back, whether he did a play fake or not, ending up dead middle of the pocket, trying to step up to the middle of the pocket, and getting completely swarmed. There was nothing to make his life easier from that perspective. When the offensive line or any unit is the weakness of your team, it's the job of the coordinator to mask that with good play calling, to work around your deficiencies and find other ways to win. Roman certainly couldn't do that, and that's why he's looking for work. The Eagles' offense has been the subject of much consternation all season, and their 23-19 loss to the 49ers at home was the nail in the coffin on a disappointing year. They couldn't even put up 20 points on this banged-up Niners defense, no matter how well coached that unit is, and heads had to roll as a result. Just like Greg Roman, Eagles OC Kevin Patullo was fired on Tuesday. And just like Roman, Patullo is a close friend and colleague of the head coach. But unlike Roman, this was Patullo's first year calling plays in the NFL, so normally you might have grace with a rookie. But Patullo's ineptitude reveals my third issue. Simplistic offense erodes buy-in from your players. Players aren't stupid. They want to be deployed in interesting ways. They watch their peers being used smartly throughout the rest of the league. And so if you're not going to be creative in how they're used, how are they going to give their best effort knowing that you're not setting them up the best you can? I've talked about the rift between Patullo and star wide receiver A.J. Brown before on this channel, and Brown isn't faultless here. His drops in the last game were extremely costly, and he's gone to the media a bit too often this season. But I still generally side with Brown's thinking on the matter, because his issue isn't get me the ball more, it's use me in more interesting ways that allow our offense to be humming. It's about unique deployment and about raising the ceiling of the the offense. Now, he knows he's talented and he knows that he should be a key cog in that direction, but he's not saying I need the ball more than Saquon Barkley and Devonta Smith. He's saying use all of us more creatively so that we can score more points. Now, Barkley and Smith and Dallas Goedert and any of the other skill players, they're not going to be as vocal about it, but I would bet they feel similarly. And as you lose buy-in from players, they're not going to spend the season learning how to solve problems creatively on their own because their mental bandwidth isn't being challenged and elevated by the scheme itself. I can count on one hand the number of times I watched Jalen Hurts, the quarterback, solve a problem creatively. Now, they won some games. They had some moments where their offense looked good, but these were just matchup wins. These were just, we're more talented than you. And that's not a sustainable approach to begin with. But the mental decay and emotional baggage that accompany a simplistic offense, those are far more detrimental. Once you meet a difficult opponent, those players need to adapt even quicker than the coordinator does. The scheme isn't teaching them how to do that. The Steelers, Chargers, and Eagles offenses died in whatever the opposite of a blaze of glory is this weekend. But that wasn't even the full extent of it. See, the Packers had a 21-3 halftime lead over the Chicago Bears this Saturday. But the Bears came out of the halftime locker room with some good defensive adjustments, and the Packers got conservative for a while. They just played simplistic offense in order to hold the lead. Their focus seemed to be not losing the game, instead of winning the game. When they started to open it back up more in the late fourth quarter, they still allowed Bears DC Dennis Allen to bait them into boundary throws that were either going to fall incomplete, or if the receiver catches it, his momentum's going to carry him out of bounds, which stops the clock as well as an incompletion, and that preserves more time for the Bears offense to make the comeback it needs to. The Packers got simple. They saw man coverage and they took what they were given, but that unfortunately was not creative within the game script that the Bears needed to pull off a win. Packers head coach Matt LaFleur is one of the better offensive play callers in the league. He's nearly on par with Shanahan, with McVay, with Johnson, but his poor game management kept him from calling good, complex offense for the entire game, and the Bears won 31-27 as a result. The Packers' loss, along with the Eagles, Chargers, and Steelers, is yet another reminder that offensive complexity is king and that it can never be set aside. You have to focus on it for all 60 minutes of every game if you want to win in this league. That's my case. If you found it compelling, please share it with other folks who might need to commiserate over the offensive philosophies that their favorite team utilizes. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments if you have thoughts, especially who you think should fill the open offensive coordinator vacancies in Philly and in LA, or any of the head coaching vacancies that are available, because this is going to be a crazy coaching cycle. So I'd love to hear from you. And as always, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. You've been watching Light Boxes. I'm Rob Ballantine. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you soon.